There's a phrase you've said today, probably more than once, and you didn't even think about it. I'm fine, thanks. Think about how many times you've said it this week. At work, to a friend, to your family, maybe even to yourself, standing in a kitchen this morning. I'm fine. Not a lie exactly, just the easiest answer available. It started as a social reflex. Someone asks how you are, you say fine, they say good, and life moves on. Nobody expected a real answer, and honestly, you didn't have one ready anyway. And at first, that's all it is. A social shortcut. A way to keep things moving. You're not hiding anything dramatic, you're just simplifying. Because not every moment needs to be unpacked. Not every "how are you" deserves the full story. I remember a specific period where I was genuinely not okay. Nothing dramatic, just off. And every single day, without thinking, I told people I was fine. Not to protect myself, just because it had become the default. And that's the strange part about I'm fine. It's not always a decision. Sometimes it just comes out. Before you've even checked in with yourself. Before you've asked the actual question. Because somewhere between being polite and protecting your energy and just keeping things simple, fine stopped being an answer. It became a habit. A small automatic wall that you don't even notice you're building anymore. There's the you that exists when no one's watching, and then there's the one you send out into the world every morning. They're not that different, but they are not exactly the same either. At some point, without really deciding to, you built a version of yourself for public use. Not fake, not a performance, just functional. The one who shows up on time, answers emails, says the right things in the right rooms. And that version of you is good at its job. It gets things done. It holds conversations without too much friction. It knows when to smile, when to nod, when to just let something go. It's actually pretty impressive when you think about it. The problem isn't that this version is dishonest. It's that it becomes the default. You stop switching it off. You come home and it's still running. You're with people you love and it's still on. Like a mode you forgot you could exit. And it's subtle. That's what makes it hard to catch. Nobody around you notices. Why would they? You look fine. You sound fine. You're participating. You're present. You're doing everything right, except actually being there. I caught myself doing this with close friends once. We were having a good evening, genuinely, and I realized I was still performing ease, instead of just feeling it. Like I'd been in on mode for so long, I'd forgotten what off actually felt like. And the strange thing is, nobody asked you to be that version. No one sat you down and said, show up composed, keep it together, don't take up too much space. You just learned it somewhere and kept going. There are things you were going to deal with at some point, when things calmed down, when you had more time, when you were ready. That was a while ago. Everyone has a drawer, not a literal one, though sometimes it's that too. But I'm talking about a mental space where things go when you're not ready to deal with them. That conversation you need to have. That feeling you haven't named yet. That thing you keep almost thinking about. And you're not avoiding it exactly. You're just postponing. There's a difference, you tell yourself. Avoiding is a choice. Postponing is just timing. You'll get to it, just not right now. Right now there's other stuff. The thing about pushing things down is that it works. That's the honest part nobody says. It genuinely works, for a while. You function, you move forward, life continues and a thing stays down, and everything is technically fine. There was a time where I was genuinely good at this. Something would come up, something uncomfortable, and I would just file it. Not dramatically, just quietly move past it. And I genuinely thought that was healthy, that I was just someone who didn't dwell. Turns out there's a difference between not dwelling and not looking. But things have a weight, even when they're not at the surface. You feel it in small ways. A low-level restlessness you can't explain. A tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. A vague sense that something is slightly off. And you can't always trace it back to anything, which almost makes it worse, because you'd prefer a clear reason. Something to point at and say, that's it, that's the thing. But it's not one thing. It's everything you quietly put away over a long time. There's no big moment, no breakdown, no revelation. Just a Tuesday afternoon where something feels a little harder than it should. And you notice, for the first time in a while, you actually notice. The world doesn't collapse all at once. It just starts to feel expensive. Like you're spending something to maintain it, and the returns are getting smaller. You say I'm fine, and it costs a little more than it used to. Nothing dramatic, just heavier. You start noticing the gap more between what you say and what you feel. Someone asks how you are, and you say fine. And somewhere underneath, there's a voice that's almost amused. Fine, sure, whatever you say. And the small things start to crack it. Not big events, small ones. A song that hits differently than expected. A random moment of silence that gets too loud. Someone asking how you are and actually meaning it. And you not knowing what to do with that. That last one is interesting, because you've had 100 conversations this week, and most of them were fine, easy, functional, forgettable. But then someone looks at you differently, takes a half second longer before moving on, and something in you almost breaks open. And that's not a crisis, that's just information, the system flagging something, saying hey, something needs attention here. Not urgently, just honestly, for once. So what do you do with all of this? You can't just decide to stop pretending. It's not a switch. But maybe that's not even the right question. Maybe the question is simpler than that. Fine was never really the goal. It was just the floor, the minimum viable answer to keep things moving. And somewhere along the way, it became the ceiling too, the highest bar you were setting for yourself. And it's not about being more open with everyone. You don't owe people your inner world. Not your colleagues, not acquaintances. Not every person who asks how you are in a hallway while already walking away. That's not the point. The point is what happens when you're alone. Whether you're honest with yourself. Whether you actually check in. Not to spiral, not to dwell. Just to ask the real question once in a while. And actually wait for the answer. Because most of the time, you already know what you actually feel. It's not hidden that deep. You just haven't given it a second of proper attention. A small clearing in the noise. That's usually all it takes. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to feel better by the end of this video. But maybe just notice. The next time you say fine, take 1 second to ask yourself if that's actually true. Not to anyone else, just to you. That's enough.